Hello, here's our last Eric Carle book. Before we read this one, I want to remind you that we've only done 4 Eric Carle stories this week, and we've read maybe 3 others previously, but there are so many more. And at the Monroe Library or at Elfo Park Library, you could find many, many others, along with checking out videos on YouTube, where you can hear and see a lot of other cool things about Eric Carle and stories that he's done. So there's many, many more to enjoy. Our last one is called A House for Hermit Crab. And on the inside, Mr. Carle has given us some information, some true facts about hermit crabs. So we're going to read that first, just so we understand why this hermit crab is doing what he's doing in this story. So it says, hermit crabs live on the ocean floor. Their skin is hard except for the abdomen, which is soft. The abdomen is kind of this part of your body, your stomach area. To protect this soft spot, the hermit crab borrows a shell and makes this its house. Then only its face, feet, and claws stick out from the shell. That way it can see, walk, and catch its food. When a hermit crab is threatened, that means that there's danger. It withdraws, that means it goes back into the shell until the danger has passed. Now, what Mr. Carle didn't say is that the shell does not grow, but the hermit crab's body does. So when the hermit crab gets too big, he has to find another shell. It's just like when you outgrow your clothes because you've gotten too tall and now your pants are too short, or things just don't fit the way they should anymore because you're growing. And so is the hermit crab. So let's find out his story and what he does to enjoy his home, his new shell. Time to move, said Hermit Crab one day in January. I've grown too big for this little shell. He had felt safe and snug in his shell, but now it was too snug. That means it's too tight. Hermit Crab stepped out of the shell and onto the floor of the ocean, but it was frightening out in the open sea without a shell to hide in. What if a big fish comes along and attacks me? He thought. I must find a new house soon. So he's leaving the old shell behind and he's going to look for a new one. Early in February, Hermit Crab found just the house he was looking for. It was a big shell and strong. He moved right in, wiggling and waggling about inside it to see how it felt. It felt just right. But it looks so, well, so plain, thought Hermit Crab. It isn't very fancy, is it? It's mostly just a white plain shell. In March, Hermit Crab met some sea anemones. They swayed gently back and forth in the water. How beautiful you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to come and live on my house? It is so plain. It needs you. I'll come, whispered a small sea anemone. Gently, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and put it on his shell. Oh my goodness, it's like he's decorating his house. In April, Hermit Crab passed a flock of starfish, moving slowly along the seafloor. How handsome you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to decorate my house? I would, signaled a little sea star. So carefully, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and put it on his house. So now he'll have the sea anemone and the starfish. In May, Hermit Crab discovered some coral. They were hard and didn't move. How pretty you are, said Hermit Crab. Would one of you be willing to make my house more beautiful? I would, creaked a crusty coral. Gingerly, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and placed it on his shell. Gingerly means very careful because coral is very fragile. So if he pinched it too hard, he would just crush it. So he has to be real careful with it. In June, Hermit Crab came to a group of snails crawling over a rock on the ocean floor. They grazed as they went, picking up algae and bits of debris and leaving a neat path behind them. "How tidy and hard-working you are," said Hermit Crab. "Would one of you be willing to come and help clean my house?" "I would," offered one of the snails. Happily, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and placed it onto the shell. He's getting to have quite a bit of things up there now, isn't he? In July, Hermit Crab came upon several sea urchins. They had sharp, prickly needles. "How fierce you look," said Hermit Crab. "Would one of you be willing to protect my house?" "I would," answered a spiky sea urchin. Gratefully, Hermit Crab picked it up with his claw and placed it near his shell. That would hurt. In August, Hermit Crab and his friends wandered into a forest of seaweed. "It's so dark here," thought Hermit Crab. "How dim it is," murmured the sea anemone. "It's gloomy," whispered the starfish. "How murky it is," complained the coral. "I can't see," said the snail. "It's like nighttime," cried the sea urchin. Wow, it's very dark. In September, Hermit Crab spotted a school of lanternfish darting through the dark water. "How bright you are," said Hermit Crab. "Would one of you be willing to light up our house?" "I would," replied one lanternfish, and it swam over near the shell. In October, Hermit Crab approached a pile of smooth pebbles. "How sturdy you are," said Hermit Crab. "Would you mind if I rearranged you?" "Not at all," answered the pebbles. Hermit Crab picked them up one by one with his claw and built a wall all around his shell. "Now my house is perfect," cheered Hermit Crab. Oh my goodness, look at all those friends he has decorating and helping him with his home. But in November, Hermit Crab felt that his shell seemed a little bit too small. Little by little, over that whole year, Hermit Crab had grown more, and soon he would have to find another bigger home. But he had come to love his friends, the sea anemone, the starfish, the coral, the sea urchin, the snail, the lanternfish, and even the smooth pebbles. "They've been so good to me," thought Hermit Crab. "They are like a family. How can I ever leave them?" In December, a smaller hermit crab passed by. "I've outgrown my shell," she said. "Would you know of a place for me?" "Well, I have outgrown my house too," answered Hermit Crab. "I must move on. You are welcome to live here, but you must promise to be good to all my friends." "I promise," said the little crab. The following January, Hermit Crab stepped out and the little crab moved in. "Couldn't stay in that little shell forever," said Hermit Crab as he waved goodbye. The ocean floor looked wider than he remembered, but Hermit Crab wasn't afraid. Soon he spied the perfect house, a big empty shell. It looked, well, a little plain. But sponges, he thought. Barnacles, clownfish, sand dollars, electric eels. Oh, there are so many possibilities. I can't wait to get started. I think he's going to do the same thing all over again, isn't he? And find all kinds of things to decorate his shell. Oh, very, very creative Mr. Carl is with his ideas and illustrations.